Australian CEOs are going to fight the gender pay gap in sports. Let's have a look. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Heiser Says. Now, I'd like to talk about this article from SBS News that just appeared. And it's about Australia's major sporting codes assigning to close the gender gap. And I don't think I need to do another video about the gender pay gap. You know, I've done a whole series on the gender pay gap. Anyone who is attracted to any of my videos will have to be reasonable enough to appreciate the fact that it is based on, frankly, decisions and market forces. Okay? Merit-based society, different outcomes. That's a sign of freedom. So, you know, that doesn't need to be discussed. At least I hope it doesn't. But what brought this to my attention and what made it interesting is that it's the CEOs. Now, several months ago, I did a video which was about CEOs against men. And in this video, I look at some footage where a group of CEOs meeting together and discussing implementing systems, discriminatory systems, to advance women at the expense of men in their organizations. And just the attitude, the attitude of these CEOs, particularly the arrogant ANZ CEO, who's now in a lot of trouble after the Royal Commission, just comes through so clearly in that video. And what I'll do is I will link that as a card in this one if you want to go see it, because I believe that is the most important thing from this. You know, gender pay gap, whoop-de-doo. We know it exists, it's done and dusted. It's female AFL, okay? They can't even attract a crowd. Sorry, girls, it's just not as exciting. It's that simple. If it's being subsidized by the male portion of the sport, probably as a social outreach, I'd call it. You know, it's a good deed of the AFL to, you know, keep people happy. To keep the wives of AFL footy players or fans happy. It's not making any money. I don't think there's anyone out here that would start a women's AFL team for the hopes of making a profit. If you know of any, please share it with me. Let me know, because everything I've looked at, haven't seen it. So let's have a read through this article, because I'm worried that these CEOs are trying to, you know, slowly bring their social engineering into, you know, the workplace from the top down, and we'll start to get more identity politics, more quotas, more of this rubbish just filtering through in our daily lives. So the CEOs of Australia's leading sports organisations have committed to ensuring elite female athletes are paid the same as their male counterparts. Okay? Australia's major sporting codes have signed up to overhaul the way they pay professional athletes in a bid to bring the gender pay gap. In a bid to bring about gender pay equality in sport. But I just need to... All I'm seeing here is when I'm reading this, all I'm seeing, the cynical bastard in me, is just seeing a bunch of business owners, leaders, managers finding a way to reduce their costs. Because what do you think will happen? Oh, we're going to push for gender equality. We're going to get rid of the gender pay gap in the AFL. What do you reckon? You think they'll bump the pay of all the women up? Ha, no, not a chance. They're going to use it to start cutting men's pay. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. I bet you this is just a way of reframing and persuading people to reduce the amount of pay for a sportsman. So, the Male Champions of Change Pathway to Pay Equality report outlines a systematic approach to achieving equal pay for men and female sports stars, improving codes, sponsors, and governments. So what I'll do, have a look at this report. So I found it. So, Pathway to Pay Equality, Elite Women Athletes, Male Champions of Change in Sport. See, even the feminists need the men to get the job done. Oh boy. So, here you can see the founder. Anyway, I'm just going to skip past that. And let's look at the letter to leaders. And these are the Meet the Champions of Change. Mark Anderson, CEO of Collingwood. Elizabeth Roderick, MCC Foundation. So, you've got quite a mix of people here. But, dear colleagues, the Male Champions of Change Sport has prioritised closing the pay gap in sport. We know that the gender pay gap between elite level athletes across a number of sports is still exceeds many other sectors. It's okay. Why? I have my arguments. I think it's the market. there is a pay equality gap where men and women competing in the same sport do not receive equal pay for the work of equal comparable value. Okay, let's just dissect that little sentence right there. So men and women competing in the same sport. Well, no, they don't. They're not actually competing. You look at AFL. You've got the men's AFL and you've got the female AFL. Those are two distinct sports. You're never going to have a crossover match, so they're not competing. They're doing the same activity, the same sporting activity, but they're not competing in the same league, and they're not competing to each other. They do not receive equal pay for equal work and comparable value. Okay. Now, is the value of the work comparable? Is the amount of audience that a female AFL star can attract the same as a male AFL star? I will bet a carton and say, no, it's not. It isn't equal. That's obvious. But they don't see that here. This is how they're framing it. And you got to remember, these are all high-achieving, C-level executives that live in their own little bubbles that just deal with other people at their level. And they believe this crap, or at least they need to believe this in order to progress their careers. Because we've gotten to the point now where human resources people are actually at a C level now. So, where it is in our control to close the gap, we are committed to doing so. I bet you are. Women also face what is called a pay equality gap arising from a wider sports ecosystem that values men's sports more than women. Yes, what's wrong with that? That's called the free market. We want freedom. Why don't all the CEOs in, like, maybe Collingwood, okay, Mark, here's a challenge to you, mate. Take a pay cut, and you pay the women's in one club, take it out of your pay, so you equalize it with the men in the Collingwood club. How about we do that? Yeah, why don't we do that? This whole identity politics rubbish, this gender pay gap, to me this seems, let me know, to me this seems so bloody obvious that this is just not real. This is just frustrating that I'm reading about this. This situation exists amidst an unprecedented focus on ensuring equal access to elite sporting opportunities for women in Australia. Well, if you look at the Commonwealth Games, there was actually more resources invested from the Com Games here in Queensland to develop sporting events for women than men. There was hardly anything for men. There was a lot of money thrown at the Regent to get women's sporting activities happening. There is much to learn from MCC Sport membership to close the pay gap. Tennis Australia, for example, has offered equal prize money for men and women in the Australian Open for over 3 decades. Unless they're in different divisions. In 2017, Cricket Australia has led a groundbreaking approach to pay equality, including gender-neutral contracts, policies, and conditions. Well, I've got no problem with that, but it comes down to your individual ability to negotiate a pay. This is all just starting to sound more and more like, Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. I need to go back into it. I need to read. I've left it go for a while. My daughter got to it and took the cover off. But it's all sounding more and more like that. There are local and international examples where well-resourced and less well-resourced sports simply make the call that pay equality matters and then make it happen. We also believe that sports organisations should be focused on closing the pay equality gap, ensuring women's sport is valued equally. Well, you've got to make it as entertaining. It's that simple. This requires leadership, even in situations when sports do not directly control an athlete's pay. There are also many other stakeholders in the sports ecosystem who have key roles to play. This paper starts by setting out the reasons why addressing the gender pay gap in elite sport is important. It explains the reason for a quick move to pay equality and framework to achieve it. The paper then provides a detailed pathway to pay equality, which involves input from all participants in the sports ecosystem. The pathway is one we support, are working towards and advocating for within our spheres of influence. There you go. On pages 30 to 31, we provide self-assessment of our progress for each stage in the pathway. So where do they explain why they believe there's a pay gap? Where do they understand, equality in sports? Oh, wow. From pay equality, sustainable pay equality. This just sounds like socialism with more steps. Equalized prize money, equalized exposure, equal opportunity. Okay, now this is an interesting one. I'm going to add a story here. I met a gentleman who organizes skating events. skateboarding events. He goes around to all of the different, for the city council to organize like meetups for the kids and competitions and things like that for, skateboarding tricks and those type of things at the skate parks. Because you've got to realize our councils have invested millions of dollars of infrastructure into these skate parks that are getting underutilized. So he's got a business where he helps them utilize it. And I was talking to him about getting women involved in the sport because he's getting a lot of these people writing him letters and complaining that there aren't more women athletes, that there aren't more women announcers. And he was saying the problem is you can offer the women prize money. You can, have spaces for them, get them, invite them to the competitions, but they won't turn up. They can't be bothered. It's too far. It's too long. Where the men will travel from one side of the country to the other to compete in a bloody thing just for a chance of $500, just to get some exposure, just to get some experience. And he's having trouble getting enough women involved. It's this damn freedom that we have. And so that's one little tiny example from here in Queensland that I think can relate to this. So he's getting all this flack when he's doing everything he can, but it's just not working. So what are they going to do here in this situation? Are they going to just start chipping down on the pay of the men? Giving less prize money for men and women, charging more for your tickets to go, having men's tickets subsidize women's sporting events? Let me know what you think. So guys, I will link to this report if you want to go through it. I don't feel like going through it now. That letter's enough to give you an understanding of kind of, it just shows you their perspective and their mentality, and the fact that all this energy has been put into this just shows you the issue. So we'll jump back here to the article. Okay, so News Corp Australia reports that NRL Chief Executive Todd Greenberg, Football Federation Australia's CEO David Gallop, Rugby Australia's CEO Ryan Castle, and chiefs of the AFL's Collingwood, Geelong, St Kilda, Richmond, and Carlton clubs, and 9 other CEOs have agreed to achieve cheap equal pay. Don't some of these clubs have drug problems? Wasn't that all in the media with all the doping problems they have? But don't worry, forget about that, Florian. That's not important. The codes will self-assess against 16 measures each year, with corporate and administrative pay to be assessed under the same measures. Male Champions of Change, Conveyor, and UN Special Rapporteur Elizabeth Broderick says equal pay in sport will send a strong message to the broader society. Yes, that we're embracing socialism, that equality of outcome is more important than equality of opportunity. It is unacceptable in 2019 that men and women playing the same sport don't get the same base pay conditions, she told News Corp. I would think that your train of thought is unacceptable in 2019, considering where that way of thinking has led in the previous century. Cricket Australia Chief Executive Kevin Roberts said pay equality is synonymous with the Australian notion of a fair go. Not really. I'm putting my hat on there. A fair go is everyone having a fair chance. Okay? And that will lead to inequalities. Pay equality is more Stalinist, Soviet, all equal. You know, the state controls all aspects of your life. Or maybe that's just me. If anyone is really serious about embracing the notion of a fair go, they'll be ready for pay equality in sports. I think contemporary Australians are definitely up for this, he said. Will you take a pay cut, mate? Sports Minister Bridget McKenzie stopped short of committing to a recommendation that government funding should hinge on pay equality. Tennis Australia CEO Craig Tilley said he was confused that other sports had not followed his sport's lead in making prize money equal for men and women back in 2005. Okay, I can tell you that. Why, Craig? Mate, because women's tennis is more popular. Men, watch it. It's that simple. There you go. Done it for you. Give me a C-level job. The target on this for all codes should not be tomorrow. It should be today, he added. Well, everyone, what do you think about this? Do you think it's a bit of a joke? I am concerned where it's coming from, at what level. I'm concerned that the C-level people are discussing in their own little meetings, and you can see that in that other video I did. They're meeting, they're discussing with each other, and they're systematically planning to implement this. I feel like I'm reading literally a chapter of Atlas right now, looking through this. Because these people are meeting, they're putting this together, and they're trying to implement social engineering, bit by bit. I want a fair go Australia as much as everyone else, but I want everyone to have a fair opportunity. Unfair outcomes, it's fine. Just don't be jealous. It's that simple. Guys, let me know what you think. Please like, share, and subscribe. Ding the bell to see my daily updates. And I will talk about Peterson's lecture later today. Take care. Bye for now.